What's going on, guys? Boost Auto here. Today we're going to be showing you how to install these Ion Series door handles on 21 and newer model Ford F150s. So let's get started. Introducing our new Ion Series light-up door handles by Boost Auto. Our door handles are direct OEM replacements, but we've turned the styling up to 11. With all the same lighting functions as our other Boost Auto products jam-packed into a factory-style door handle. Plus, the Ion Series handles can be built to have white or amber running light to fit right with any build. A couple things to note before we get into the install. This product and procedure are specifically for 2021 and newer model Ford F150 trucks. If your vehicle is a different year range, head on over to boostauto.com for the latest in fitment and availability and to purchase all we have to offer. Okay guys, the first step before we disconnect the battery, we're going to want to make sure to move both our front seats all the way forward and also make sure that all your windows are all the way up.
Before starting disassembly, we will also be disconnecting the negative terminal on our primary battery. If you have an auxiliary battery, disconnect the negative terminal on it as well.
Okay guys, starting on the passenger side, we're going to want to remove our door panel. We can pop off our sail panel trim.
Remove the bolt underneath the sail panel. Use a trim tool to remove the trim panel under the door grab, then remove the two bolts that are revealed. Remove the reflector on the side of the door panel and then remove the bolt that is revealed. Don't forget to remove the two bolts on the underside of the door panel.
Okay, the only thing holding the panel on at this point is trim clips. So if we just firmly grab the panel and pull, you can disengage the clips on the bottom and just work your way around, making sure that all of them are disengaged. And then once they're all disengaged, we can pull up and out and pull the panel off. First, we'll disconnect this lock rod. Just grab these little tabs here and pull down. Now for the door handle cable, there's a little tab at the bottom that you're just gonna wanna pull down on, and then this whole thing unlatches like so. Now we can disconnect any electrical connectors we have present.
Now onto the speaker. First, unplug the electrical connector and then remove the 4 bolts holding the speaker in.
And pull out. Okay, now we can peel back our splash guard. Just work your way all the way around and then pull it completely off the door.
Now back to the door. If your door handles have passive entry, the first thing we will want to do is disconnect the passive entry harness as shown. If you do not have passive entry, this connector and harness may still be present. If this is the case, unplug the connector and we will show you what to do with it later in the install video.
Alright, now we're going to want to remove this grommet that is hiding the 5mm bolt that we need to get to.
Use a 5mm socket to slowly loosen the bolt we exposed while simultaneously pulling the handle open. Once the handle pops out, stop loosening the bolt. It is important to only use hand tools during handle installation.
Okay, once that rear pops out, now we can come over to the front and just wiggle it out, pull it to the rear of the door, and that'll come unlatched. And there is our old handle removed.
Depending on how the handle was removed, this metal tab may have to be moved into the correct position. If the tab is not already flush with the plastic, we will need to loosen the 5mm bolt until it is flush.
Okay, with the old handle removed, we can now proceed with installing our Ion Series handle. So we're going to take the electrical connector on the front. This is going to latch in first and then just kind of turn the handle inward like that. And now we're going to feed that back part in.
Once your handle is popped into place, slowly tighten the 5mm bolt while pushing in towards the door on the handle. It will pull back into place and snap shut. Once this has happened, continue tightening the bolt until this is snug.
Once the Ion Series handle is installed, don't forget to pop this grommet back in. Okay guys, now we can start removing our rear door panel.
The rear door panel removes the same as the front door, except there is no sail panel trim or bolt. To remove the speaker, we will disconnect any electrical connectors and then remove the 3 bolts holding it to the door, then detach the 2 clips holding it in. Peel off the splash guard. To begin removing our rear handle, we will take this grommet off. Now repeat the same steps for handle removal and Ion Series handle installation that we did on the front.
Don't forget to reinstall your little grommet. Okay guys, now that our passenger side front and rear handles are installed, we can repeat all the same steps up until this point on the driver's side.
We now need to gain access to the BCM on the passenger side of the vehicle. To start, we will remove the front sill plate. Take off the BCM cover and kick plate panel on the passenger side of the vehicle.
Now for the kick plate, if you just get a firm hold behind it and just disengage those trim clips up top. The first thing we're gonna do is find a suitable spot to place our Ion Series module, because after we tap, we're gonna be cutting our wires to length wherever the module is at. So you can find a suitable spot that you like. We're just gonna place it up here like so. And then we can start with our tapping. Now we can plug our 4-pin harness into the Ion Series module. Now we can plug the 2-pin harness into our Ion Series module.
There are 2 different tapping locations for this install based on your vehicle's year range. We will first look at the 2021 to 2023 tapping locations. At the upper right-hand corner of the BCM, we will first be removing the smaller black connector with the gray latch. Depress the tab under the latch and then pull down on the latch to release the connector. Cut the zip tie on the connector. With the latch disengaged and being held away from you, take a flathead screwdriver and depress this tab on the left to release the wires we will need to access. Use the flathead to further pull the connector out. Take the wires out. Being shown on screen is the pin 40 indicator. We will be using this as our point of reference to find the wires we will be tapping. First, we will locate pin 39, which is 1 slot to the right of pin 40. Attach a T-tap on the wire and then clamp it down. Now we will locate pin 38, which is 2 slots to the right of pin 40. Attach a T-tap and clamp it down. Take the red wire with blue tracer from the 4-pin harness coming off your Ion Series module and measure it up to the T-tap so we can cut it to length. Cut, strip, and crimp a disconnect onto the wire.
Now we can take our disconnect and plug it into the T-tap on pin 39. Now we can take the red wire with green tracer from our 4-pin harness on our Ion Series module, measure that up to length with the T-tap on pin 38.
Cut, strip, and crimp a disconnect onto the wire.
Then we can plug that into the T-tap on pin 38.
Reinstall the connector into the wire cover and reinstall a zip tie around the wires. Now reinstall the connector into the BCM, making sure to re-engage the latch.
Okay guys, now if you option for running light, we'll be tapping our orange wire from our Ion Series module to this connector here. It's the larger black connector with the white latch on the upper right hand side of the BCM. If you did not option for running light, you can just take this orange wire and cut it from the module and just disregard it because you will not be needing it. Okay, now we can disconnect this connector. So you're just going to depress that tab underneath the latch, then unlatch it, pull it out. Now we can cut our zip tie on that wire shield. On the side with the latch, there's a little tab for the wire shield you'll want to depress. Now the wire shield will just come off. Now we're going to be tapping to pin 3. So if we're looking at the connector from the back side like this with the latch at the bottom, it's going to be on the bottom row, 3rd slot to the left. There's also a pin 1 identifier right here, so it'll be 2 slots over from that, and that's going to be this wire right here.
Now we can add a T-tap to that pin 3 wire. Make sure to tap far enough up on the wire to ensure the connector shield can be reinstalled.
Use a pair of pliers to push it down until it clicks. Now we can take our orange wire, measure it up to our T-tap on pin 3 and cut it to length. Now we can strip the wire. Now crimp on a single disconnect. Then you can plug your disconnect into the T-tap that we put on pin 3. Now we can put our wire cover back on. Just going to want to latch the top in first. And then clip the other side in. Now we can reinstall a zip tie around the wires. Then we can plug our connector back in. Just clip it in and then relatch the latch.
Now we will take a look at the tapping locations on 2024 plus F150 models. We will be accessing the BCM on the passenger side of the vehicle for our tapping location. Locate the large connector with the white latch at the left-hand side of the BCM, remove the zip ties on it. Then depress the tab on the connector, pull up on the white latch, and then remove the connector. Now depress the latch holding the wire cover onto the connector and then remove it to expose the wires. Looking at the back side of the connector with the latch all the way forward, pin 31 is in the row all the way to the right 6 slots from the top. We will want to place the T-tap far enough up the wire to allow the proper reinstallation of the wire shield. Place a T-tap on the wire and then use a pair of pliers to clamp it down. Now locate the wire coming out of pin 6. Pin 6 is in the row all the way to the left 4 slots from the top. Take your T-tap, attach it to the wire, and clamp it down. Lastly, if you option for running light, we will be tapping to the wire coming from pin 15. Pin 15 is in the second row to the right 4 slots from the top. Take your T-tap, attach it to the wire, and clamp it down. First, take the red wire with green tracer, cut it to length, strip the end, then crimp a disconnect to it. We will plug this into the T-tap on the wire from pin 31. Now we will cut the red wire with blue tracer to length, strip the end of it, and crimp a disconnect on. This will plug into the T-tap on the wire coming from pin 6 of the connector. If you option for running light, we will take the orange wire, cut it to length, strip the end of it, and then crimp a disconnect on. We will then plug the disconnect into the T-tap on the wire coming from pin 15. Now replace the wire shield on the connector, reconnect it to the BCM, and pull the latch down. Do your best to replace the zip ties we cut off earlier to ensure that the connector and harness is secured to the BCM. Tapping for the 2-pin input harness is going to be the same for both applications.
Now we're going to be working with the 2-pin harness off the Ion Series module. So the black wire, we're going to crimp on a ring terminal and we'll be connecting that to this ground stud just to the right of the BCM. And then our red wire is going to be power. We're going to later be feeding that underneath the dash to the driver's side. Now we can measure the black wire up to length with our ground stud and then cut it. Then we could strip the end, crimp on a ring terminal from your kit. Now we can remove the 13mm nut on the ground stud. Then we can install our ring terminal, reinstall the nut. Okay guys, now the red wire from the 2-pin harness, we're gonna have to pass underneath the dash to the driver's side because we're actually gonna be tapping this at the OBD2 connector. So the best way to do that is we're just gonna tape our wire to a straightened out piece of metal and then we can feed it through the underside of the dash.
Once your wire is passed over, remove it from the straightened out metal piece.
Okay guys, with the red wire passed underneath the dash to the driver's side, we're going to be working with this OBD2 connector. So we're going to need to unplug it from this little metal cage that it's in. So if you just get a pick or a screwdriver on one of the tabs on the side, depress the tab, and then push the connector back through.
We're going to be tapping to pin 16 on the OBD2 connector. So if you're looking at the connector from the back side with the wide end facing up, pin 16 is going to be the very bottom left-hand pin.
Now we can add a T-tap to that pin 16 wire. Use a pair of pliers to push it down until it clicks. Now we can take the red wire, cut it to length with the T-tap, strip the end. Now we're gonna grab the included fuse in our kit and we're gonna crimp the butt connector end to the stripped end of our red wire. And we can heat shrink the butt connector. Now we can crimp a single disconnect onto the other end of the fuse. Now we can take the disconnect and plug it into the T-tap that we put on pin 16 of the OBD2 connector.
Reinstall the OBD2 connector. Now, secure the wire above to make sure the wire is out of the way of the pedals. Take 2 door handle harnesses from your kit and plug them into the right-hand front and rear slots on the Ion Series module.
Now we're gonna start with wiring the right-hand front. With the right-hand harnesses plugged in, we can now begin disassembling the door jamb boot. Now we're gonna have to release the door connector. So on this boot, you can leave the boot on to disconnect it, but there's gonna be a tab here on the top, a tab in the middle, here on both sides, as well as a tab at the bottom. So we're gonna depress the top tab and begin to slide that connector out. Then depress the side tab, then the bottom tab. With the door connector partially out like this, we can disconnect this part of the boot, and that'll allow us to peel it back a little more to get more access to that tab on the back side. Now we can fish our pick between the boot and the connector to the back side and feel for that tab on the back. Once that tab on the back is released, then the whole door connector can come out. Now we can disconnect the 2 connectors on the main door connector. So you just get a pick, depress that tab on the top. And there's gonna be a tab on the same spot on the bottom for the other connector. With those disconnected, we can fish our boot and connector below this latch and pull it out. Now we can pull the rest of these tabs from the boot off the connector. There's gonna be 2 on the front and then 2 on the back. And then the boot can come separate from the connector like that. Now we can pull the bottom part of the boot out of the door itself. So you just get a firm grasp on that boot and pull out. The whole boot can come out. If you have tape on the back side of the boot here, you'll just want to cut that back. That'll make it easier when we're fishing wires through there later. Now we can take our straightened out piece of metal, go through the top of that hole. Once it's in the cab, you can just grab the other side of the straightened out piece of metal, kind of bring it through like that. Now we're gonna take the harness that doesn't have tape on the end, because that's what we designated as the right front harness, and we're just gonna tape that to our straightened out piece of metal here. And we can pull our straightened out piece of metal back through, and pull your slack from the harness through the hole in the cab. When we bring the slack from the harness through the hole in the cab, make sure that we route it around the back side of this door hinge. Now we can take the straightened out metal piece with the harness taped to it and first feed it through the open slot on the door connector, and then begin feeding it through the door jamb boot. Once the metal piece starts to protrude out the backside of the door jamb boot, we can start feeding it into the hole in the door. With it in the hole in the door, we can grab the backside of the metal piece and continue feeding it through. pull your slack through the boot and into the door. With most of our slack pulled through the door, now we can start reconnecting our door connector and our boot. So we're going to begin by connecting the boot to the door connector. Once the boot is clipped around the edge of the connector, we can re-secure the little rubber tabs. Now we can plug back in the two connectors to the main door connector. With those plugged in, we can push the main connector back into the hole in the body. Make sure we don't pinch any of the wires on our door handle harness. Now we can re-secure the bottom side of the boot. Just push that back into the door. Now with our boot refastened, we can continue to pull all of our slack through the boot and through the inside of the cab. And once we got all our slack out, we're gonna proceed with trying to follow this factory harness up to the back side of the door. And we wanna try and follow this factory harness as close as we can.
We're going to be securing the wires to the factory harness behind this rubber grommet. Now we can secure the ion handle harness to keep it away from the window track. Once the door handle harness is pulled through the main part of the door, we can continue routing it along the factory harness. Once the wires are secured to the factory harness, we need to install a few adhesive clips to help guide the wires around the window track. It's important you install the clips on the inner side of the door and the 90-degree edge where the door latch is mounted. Now go ahead and wipe down the inner door before placing the clips. Now install the clips, making sure to firmly stick them in place.
So now that we've got our harness all the way up to the end of the door here, we're gonna loop it around the back side of the window track. We wanna start on this side of it and end on that outside part of the door.
Once all the slack is pulled through and the wires are around the window track, you're going to continue running the wires behind the upper door support beam. Secure the wires into the clips and click them closed. Your harness should look like this when complete. Measure the door handle harness to length, giving yourself enough slack to reach the door handle and cut the harness.
With our harness now cut to length, we're gonna go ahead and strip the ends of each wire. Now we can use a heat gun to shrink the heat shrink.
Now add a dab of dielectric grease to the connector and plug it into the door handle.
Now you might have two different scenarios. If you have passive entry handles, you're gonna take your passive entry harness connector and plug that into the handle.
If you don't have passive entry but still have this connector, go ahead and secure the connector with an adhesive clip.
Okay, now that our right-hand front harness is routed and connected to the door handle, we're gonna move on to the right-hand rear harness. There's a little extra trim we're gonna have to remove to get our harness back there, so we're gonna do that now. So we're gonna have to remove this lower B-pillar trim panel, and to start by doing that, we're gonna take off this rear sill plate. Then we're gonna peel back the weather stripping. We only have to peel it back up to where the bottom panel meets the top panel. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the weather stripping on the front of the B-pillar. Just peel it up to that same spot. Now we can pull up the seatbelt boot.
Now remove the B-pillar, making sure to disengage all of the trim clips.
With the trim clips disengaged, you can guide the seatbelt through the hole at the bottom of the panel. Pull a little slack in the seatbelt, and then you can set this to the side. At this point, we can take our right-hand rear harness and begin feeding it towards the rear door. What I like to do is just loop the harness underneath these plastic pieces, just following that factory harness back to the B-pillar. Once we get the harness closer to the B-pillar here, we can feed it underneath the seatbelt tensioner and just feed all our slack through back towards that rear door.
Now we can remove the door jamb boot by pressing down the clip on the top of the connector and prying it out.
Now we can disconnect the single connector. Now we can feed it below this hinge here, like that. Now we can release the bottom part of the boot. Cut back the tape on the bottom of the boot here. Now we can release the door jamb boot from the connector to just relieve these rubber tabs. With our door connector and our door jamb boot undone, we can take our harness again, and on the inside of the vehicle, we can feed it through this hole here and out the opening in the B-pillar. Bring the harness on the inside of this hinge. Leave yourself just a little slack on the back side because later we're gonna be zip tying the harness to this factory harness here leading up the side of the B-pillar. Now we're gonna be running the harness through the door jamb boot, so we're first gonna tape the harness to a straightened out metal piece. Now we can take our straightened out metal piece and we're first gonna feed it through the open slot on the door connector and then through the door jamb boot. Once the metal piece starts protruding from the back side of the boot, we're gonna guide it through the hole in the door. Bring all your slack through into the door. Now we can reinstall our boot onto the door connector. Just work your way around the edge of the connector. You can re-engage those little rubber tabs. Now we can plug our connector back in.
Make sure that the wires on our harness aren't going to get pinched before reconnecting the boot. Resecure the grommet on the bottom end of the door jamb boot. Now pass the harness back through the speaker hole and out the main part of the door. We're going to be securing the wires to the factory harness behind this rubber grommet. Now we can secure the ion handle harness to keep it away from the window track. Once the door handle harness is pulled through the main part of the door, we can continue routing it along the factory harness.
So first we're just gonna clean the surface we'll be sticking the clips to.
We can now place our adhesive clips on the inside of the door.
So just like the front, I'm just gonna twist the wire ends together, make a little hook to help it loop around the window track.
Once all the slack is pulled through and the wires are around the window track, you're going to continue running the wires behind the upper door support beam. With the harness secure, measure it to length with the connector on the handle and trim the access.
With our harness now cut to length, we're gonna go ahead and strip the ends of each wire. All right, with the wire ends stripped, just like the front, we can go ahead and grab another extension harness from our kit, and then we're gonna crimp each end of its respective wire onto the harness. With them all crimped on, we can use a heat gun to shrink the heat shrink.
Now add a dab of dielectric grease to the connector and plug it into the door handle. Clean the surface by the connector to attach one more adhesive clip. Now we can secure the ion handle harness to keep it away from the window track.
All right guys, now that our right-hand side harnesses are all situated, we're gonna be now working with the left-hand side. So to do that, we're gonna take our left-hand front and our left-hand rear harnesses and we're gonna plug them into the module, and then we're gonna pass them through the underside of the dash along the firewall to the driver's side.
Put tape on one of the harnesses so we can differentiate which one is the front and which one is the rear once we have the wires passed over. Plug the harnesses into the left-hand front and rear slots on the Ion Series module, keeping in mind which you put the tape on.
With both our harnesses plugged in, we can tape the ends to a straightened out piece of metal, and then we will proceed with feeding them underneath the dash to the driver's side. Once your wire is passed over, remove it from the straightened out metal piece. All right guys, with both our left-hand side harnesses now on the driver's side of the vehicle, we can just repeat all the same steps that we did on the passenger side. You'll just want to make sure that this wire that you have under the dash, you're just going to want to tie it up under the dash to existing harness and keep it out of the way of the brake and accelerator pedal.
Clip the lower B pillar trim back into place.
The seatbelt boot back in place, just clips in the bottom. Now we can just feed the weather stripping back into place.
Now reinstall the rear sill plate.
Install the weather stripping on the front side of the B pillar. Now we can reinstall our kick panel.
It may be easier to remove a bit of the weather stripping in this area, as well as unclip the side of the dash to make it easier to clip the kick panel back into place.
Now we can latch in the bottom clips. Okay. And we can resituate our weather stripping.
Replace the BCM cover, making sure to latch the clips on the inside of the kick panel.
Now we can reinstall our front sill plate. Just clips into place.
Now, clip the speaker back into place, reconnect the electrical connector, and then replace all the bolts. Replace the weather seal.
Now with our door panel, we can reinstall our lock rod. So that just push that up until it clicks. For the door handle cable, we're just gonna latch the top part in first and then push the bottom in until it clicks.
Reconnect any electrical connectors you disconnected while disassembling.
Now we're gonna take the panel up, latch it into the top weather stripping. Then we can go around the sides and re-engage all the trim clips.
Replace the 2 bolts under the door grab as well as the bolt under the sail panel. Then replace the trim pieces.
Don't forget the 2 7mm bolts at the bottom of the door panel.
Replace the bolt on the side of the door panel as well as the reflector.
For the rear door panel installation, we're going to start by reinstalling the speaker and the splash guard.
Now, clip the speaker back into place, reconnect the electrical connector, and then replace all the bolts. Then you can repeat all the same steps as the front door panel for the rear door panel reinstallation. Lastly, reconnect the negative terminal on the battery.
Okay guys, that's going to conclude it for this install. As you can see, these Ion Series door handles really look sharp. If you want to pick yourself up a set, head on over to boostautoparts.com. They'll really bring your build to the next level. You can also find other accessories like our LumaStep M2 running boards or even our mirror lights. We'll catch you guys in the next one. The products shown in this video and so much more can be purchased on our website at boostauto.com. We're proud to offer a wide variety of products, parts, and accessories for your truck or SUV that will take your build to the next level. To watch videos like this one and to find out about our newest innovative products for your vehicle, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's all for now. We'll catch you in the next one.